I probably did better than most of my peers, sorry, in terms of progression and these sorts of things, just because of how I.
So hey guys, welcome back to a new video. My name is Akash Sharma and I am a research student at the University of Melbourne. So guys, in this specific podcast, I got an opportunity to speak with Andy. Andy is an Australian who lives in India, and my man is on a mission to help all the Indian international students who are coming here in Australia to study. In this specific video, he has shared all the specific insights that you need to be successful in Australia as an international student. आपको हर जो चीज़ चाहिए इन ऑस्ट्रेलिया में सक्सेसफुल होने के लिए, क्या क्या वो स्पेसिफिक स्किल्स हैं, वो क्या क्या सॉफ्ट स्किल्स हैं जो आपको लगेंगे all during your time in Australia, or even if you want to pay permanent residency here, आपको किस पाथ के थ्रू क्या क्या करना चाहिए. ऑल द कोर्स ऑफ टाइम आपको एंडी ने पूरा ब्रेक डाउन करके बताया है. उसने बहुत सारे इंसाइट्स इस पॉडकास्ट में शेयर किए. एंड थैंक यू सो मच एंडी फॉर डूइंग दिस पॉडकास्ट विद मी. इट वाज अ लवली अपॉर्चुनिटी स्पीकिंग विद यू. एंड ऑनेस्टली आफ्टर द पॉडकास्ट इवन आई गॉट टू लर्न अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स फ्रॉम यू. आई हैव शेयर्ड ऑल हिज लिंक्स, ऑल हिज सोशल मीडिया लिंक्स इन द डिस्क्रिप्शन सेक्शन टू डू विजिट हिज सोशल मीडिया. पहले पूरी पॉडकास्ट देखो. एंड इस पॉडकास्ट में बिफोर आई मूव ऑन, आई वॉन्ट टू टेल कि इस पॉडकास्ट के बीच में कहीं एंडी ने एक बहुत अच्छे सॉफ्ट स्किल की बात की है. जेन्युइनली उसने एक ऐसी ट्रिक बताई है यहाँ पे जॉब्स क्रैक करने की, यहाँ पे सक्सेसफुल होने की, जो आपको किसी और चैनल के ऊपर कहीं नहीं मिलती. तो अगर आपको if you are liking my content, so please do subscribe to it, because I want to give you the best content which is available for anyone who's coming to Australia as an international student. So thank you so much guys, and enjoy the sit tight, enjoy the podcast. पूरी देखना, एंड तक देखना. एंड अगर आपको कोई डाउट है तो कमेंट सेक्शन में आप पूछ सकते हो. एंड अगर आपको कोई पर्सनल डाउट है तो आप मेरे को इंस्टाग्राम पे भी टेक्स्ट कर सकते हो. ऑल्सो आई रन अ वेरी गुड टेलीग्राम चैनल फॉर ऑल द इंटरनेशनल स्टूडेंट्स हू आर कमिंग हियर टू ऑस्ट्रेलिया. उसका लिंक भी मैं डिस्क्रिप्शन सेक्शन में डाल दूंगा. तो फटाफट पॉडकास्ट को कर लो एंजॉय, एंड सब्सक्राइब कर लेना चैनल को. थैंक यू सो मच.
Yeah, that's true. All right, cool.
So Andy, actually I wanted to part this entire podcast into these three sections. The first one is the accent part, how difficult it is to understand the accent. I was going through your entire Instagram page, and you have made a lot of specific reels on Aussie slangs. Honestly, they are really helpful, and there are few slangs which I learned even from you. The second will be the budgeting, and the third will be, of course, cities, and the fourth one we'll keep it for the fourth one. We'll decide over the podcast what we'll discuss.
Cool. All right, sounds good.
So let's start with the accent. My interaction with the accent was when I came here initially. So the first subject that I had. So one of the interesting things that I noticed when I came here, for the accent especially, was with my TP3 professor. So he's a great guy. He came in the lecture, and he started his lecture. That was my first lecture here, and I came on 19th of July. My first lecture was on 22nd of July. So I only had like 2 days in between to understand everything. I came here before in 2022 for a research camp for 1 week, but it was like a very minimal interaction with the locals and even with the students.
Yeah.
On 22nd of July, he came into the lecture hall and he started speaking. Trust me, I didn't understand anything for the first 20 minutes. I didn't understand. That's physics. I didn't understand anything. He was writing. I understood what he was writing, but I didn't understand anything.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I consider myself that I can speak English, I can interact in English, but there are students who have not a good hold on English, and then they get a cream layer of accent on that. So can you please give them a little bit of tips, and what are your insights on how to initial, like a student is fresh in Australia, new in Sydney maybe.
Yeah.
How does he deal with
definitely
accent?
It's tough because, and I have a story on that as well. When I did a bit of a travel through Europe, and I met another Australian guy, and when we used to speak to each other, even other English-speaking countries, people from US, Canada, UK, had no idea what we were saying. So it's not even like an English barrier thing. I think it's an Australia versus rest of the world problem. Because the problem is that we roll our words. We remove letters, and then we just roll all our words into like one big kind of word. That's the problem. I think the only way to practice is to hear it and to try and absorb content, even like whether it's TV shows, Australian TV shows, or just familiarize yourself with the accent. Even watching cricket, the cricket commentators, instead of maybe watching the Indian commentators, you could put the Australian commentators on for particular games, because they speak pretty like Aussie, quite Aussie accent. So I think there's nothing more you can do than just start to familiarize yourself. And there's ways to do that before you even land in the country. Like I said, TV shows, even if you have an Australian friend, speak to them. I'm trying to do that on my content as well, trying to break down some of those barriers. But there's really nothing you can do other than exposing yourself to it. And then even making a friend where you're comfortable enough to say, I have no idea what you just said. Can you slow down and then tell me what you meant and then tell me how you said it so I can sort of understand in the future what you're talking about. Because even now I'm sort of, since I moved to India, I sort of intentionally or even unintentionally slow down and better articulate my words. But when I'm at home or talking to another Australian, it's like just craziness comes out of my mouth. So yeah, I think just exposure, as much exposure as you can before you land. And then as you land, like you said, your first 20 minutes were horrible, but then yeah, I'm sure maybe you started to pick up some words and I'm sure over the weeks and months now you've been sort of completely fine, I guess. Is that your experience? Like it took a few weeks?
Yeah, it's completely okay now. Now even I'm a bit of, Aussie slangs. I know what I put my aunties in the washi, mate. So
100%.
yeah, so one of my friend, he taught me like so I used to live with one Aussie guy, and
nice.
he randomly said, I put my aunties in the Aussie washing machine.
What does that mean? I didn't really realize how Australian so many Australian words are. Like I thought a lot of English speaking countries just say a lot of them, which they do, some of them, but some of them are just some of the slang words are just so Australian that nobody has any idea what we're talking about.
So can we hop on some of the slang words that are like typical popular here? So yeah, I'll put this on you. Yeah.
That's a tough one. We use the word bloody a lot.
Yeah, bloody.
And we swear a lot, which I won't use the words here, but we swear a lot, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's an insult. That's the trick with the swear words. You kind of have to feel the circumstance and the context to see if it's a massive compliment or an insult or what it is. So that's something that you need to navigate, especially in social settings, not so much formal education or anything like that. Yeah. But in social settings, that's I guess a tough one that you probably come across. Bloody is used a lot. I think the most of the slang is just taking proper English and just, like I said before, just jumbling all the words all together and making like one big word, like how's it going? It's like, how's it going?
Yeah.
Like, how's it going?
How's it going?
Yeah. How's it going, mate? How's it going? Like how are you? Yeah. So things like that. G'day, mate. G'day's a big one. Like that's just again means how are you? There's heaps of these little, just slogans and slangs. We essentially just put words together, remove a few letters, and just have like a lazy version of English, pretty much.
Yeah. Even heaps is one of the Australian words.
Heaps. That's one that gets a lot of people. Heaps means, for the audience, heaps means like a lot. And we say it all the time. We say it heaps, actually. we say heaps. And no one knows what we're talking about when we say heaps.
Yeah. So I have had friends here who came back in like, I think before COVID, 2019. So during COVID, they had zero interaction. And now in 2021, 2022, when the,
of course.
Came up, so they honestly don't have any friends here, the entire education. So because student period is the time when you make the most of your friends, because that's when you interact.
Correct. Absolutely.
That's when you
absolutely.
And now they are on work visas. So they don't have any friends in their colleges, and they are only friends within. And I'm not like, where do you even go? So can you give any recommendations for anyone who's not accessible to a university? Like I'm going to university, I have friends there. I can make friends go around. Yeah. But someone who is not on a university visa, or maybe someone else who's on a work visa, who has not who was very introverted during his university. Yeah. How can you go around and make friends?
I think one of the big avenues for this really in Australia as well is through sports and fitness. And I know sport and fitness isn't for everybody, but it doesn't need to be something that takes a toll, or, if you don't like doing sport, is there a book club, is there a chess club? It can kind of be any sort of social environment. Sport and fitness is great in Australia. Run clubs right now are kicking off, are going crazy. Lots of people are joining run clubs, tennis clubs, cricket clubs. They are an amazing place, because the reason why they're an amazing place to make friends and meet people is because, firstly, you already know you have something in common, right? And that's part of a friendship, and that's how you make a friendship, is that, do we have anything in common? Immediately, if you go to any of these events, book club, chess club, whatever, you know you have something in common with everybody else in the room. And so that breaks down one barrier. But secondly, it's just a place to, I guess, meet people from all over the place, and then you can meet their friends as well. And especially in team sports, there's something special about having a teammate, if you're on a cricket team or a footy team or soccer team or anything like that, there's something special about being teammates and working towards an objective together that immediately creates a friendship and a bond. And so I think that that's the best ways. Obviously, like you said, uni is a great way to meet people, but if you don't have that exposure, you have to put yourself in situations where you can meet people with similar interests or getting group team environments. I think that's absolutely the best way. And Australia definitely accommodates for that. There's pretty much everyone goes to a gym, even at the gym, you can just be doing some on the treadmill or something and start talking to people. People are usually really friendly. I've made a lot of friends, even just at the gym. You start talking about different exercises you're doing or what you're training on a day and share tips and things like that. So pretty much anything you can do when you step out of the house, that's, I guess, something, you're sharing an interest with somebody else. I think that is really, really critical. And right now in Australia, health and fitness, anything in that space or some sort of interest club is a really great way to meet people.
Yeah, I can understand. I can completely understand how fitness and, gymming culture will make you a lot of friends. I started going to when I was in November. I live in, so I don't mind disclosing. I live in Brunswick. So I go to Brunswick. Nice. So it's a great gym.
Yeah, cool.
And I went there and I made a few of friends, but I used to go in the night. So even people were there in the night at 10 p.m. doing gym. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, that's cool, because it's cool for India because we sleep late. We tend to sleep late at, we're open.
I know. Everything's late.
Starts on like 5.
I know. That's what a few people have said to me. Everything's shut so early in Australia.
Yeah, everything. So how's like India? India is very different from Australia, right? So we have everything open 1 a.m. or maybe 2 a.m. You'll find food stalls which open overnight. But here in Australia, even in Melbourne, you'll only find one street, which is like, I think, King Street, which will be open till overnight. Otherwise, there's barely anything which is open. So
especially through the week, right? Like I guess weekends are a bit more vibrant.
Yeah.
But yeah, through the week, you're right. Things close, especially sort of Monday to Wednesday in particular, but Monday to Thursday, things kind of tend to close early. But I guess that's a population thing as well. Like you got so many people here that want to do different things at different times, whereas somewhere the population's so much less. There's just the businesses can't make enough money to be open late, 7 days a week.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I guess it's just the foot traffic problem.
Yeah. Even so one of the shockers that I had here when I came was the fact that when you have the picture of Australia in your mind, you'll find, heaps of people going around and all that. All
heaps of people, nice.
But when I came here, I understand that if you go like maybe 30 kilometers away or maybe 40 kilometers away, there's entire jungle.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing.
Specific directions where you'll find population. Whereas in India, if you go to travel, you'll definitely find people around. But
everywhere, right? Super funny. When I fly, even from Australia to India, I'll fly over Australia, and I'll leave Melbourne because I'm from Melbourne, and then there'll be just darkness. There'll be darkness and emptiness for hours and hours and hours as I fly over Australia. And then I get to India eventually, and there's just lights and population over the entire country. Like there's no areas where there's nothingness, and it's completely different. That's kind of the difference. And Australia's such a big country land-wise, but then such a small amount of people because we just live in very small pockets on the coast. But yeah, it's hilarious. It's hilarious to see nothingness for hours when you fly over.
Exactly. So one of my friends, she was coming to Brisbane. I think she was living in Bangalore in India. So I think
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She was living in Bangalore, and she was like, "Can I get jobs in Brisbane? How tough it is." And she was like, "There's so many people living in Australia." I was like, "What is the population of Brisbane?" I was like, "No." She was like, I said it is 2.5 million. And you know what? Bangalore, it's 2.5 crores. So that's
I know.
10x of it.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you feel a density difference? Do you feel it between India? Yeah.
Not in the inner suburbs. So I think Brunswick and if you go till Coburg, it's pretty dense. But if you go far from the far suburbs, there's like big houses and it's stuff.
Yeah.
It's houses over and over. They're like one suburb or the other. So it's pretty.
Yeah, definitely.
The best part about Australia is the cities are like Europe. But the suburbs are like US.
True. Interesting. So, I've never been to the US to know, but I guess the cities are like Europe.
Yeah. The cities are like Europe. If you go around Melbourne, you'll find very Victorian buildings also. Even the
true.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the British influence, right?
Yeah, that's one of the British influence.
Yeah,
but we don't have that in India. Besides, of the leftovers.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Anyways, so the second part which I want to go on to is the budget part, is the finance part. So I'll tell you my perspective from it. When I came to Australia, I used to work at one of the teaching firms in India. But like I was studying. I'm just 22 right now. I was studying from 19 20, till 21. I was doing my bachelor's, and during that time, I was also teaching people from online websites. So I used to get a monthly payment. The salary is month-wise in India. We get our salaries paid out on the first of the month usually. So like whatever you have worked in the February, you'll get on the March 1. But here in Australia, you either get weekly pay, you get hourly wages, or you get bi-weekly. And it was pretty difficult to budget around because for me, initially, when I got my first salary, I bought like 2 Nike Jordans. I was like,
what not to do, huh?
That's exactly what you not need to do. And later I regretted it because I didn't have money to pay the rent.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that you realize. Can you give a little bit of tips? First, can you give a little bit of tips how to manage your finances? Because when a child comes here, they're probably in the 90s or 21. And as soon as they get the money, they're like, let's spend it because
absolutely. I think the first thing you need to do before you come to Australia or before you land is to know how much approximately things are going to cost. Because I think there's a little bit of a misconception that, what's the minimum salary? 23 Australian dollars, in Australia right now. And it's like, wow, that's so much, over 1,000 rupees. But then you forget the part where it's like everything else is so much more expensive, right? It's not just about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And so I think keeping that in mind and knowing how much approximately, just doing some rough calculations around doing a little bit of research around how much life will actually cost in Australia. And then understanding that, as a student, you can only work 24 hours, understanding at least using the minimum salary of $23 as a base and try to understand how much we're actually going to save, which is likely not much as a student, right? If anything. And so I think that's the first starting point, is know that you're not going to be making all this Australian money. It's just not the reality of it. But then once you land, I think just being really careful and cautious about what you spend. Like I said, you're probably not going to be making that much money as a student in Australia. And so just monitoring your expenditure. A lot of the big banks, I think CBA has a really good app, but all the big four have great apps to kind of track your income. I think it's absolutely critical, and I'm an accountant by trade. So I guess this is in my mind, but I think it's critical for every single student to know on a weekly basis, minimum on a monthly basis, exactly what they're spending and where they're spending it on. You cannot be spending more than you're making to survive in Australia, because you'll end up in this cycle that you just can't get out of. You have to track what you're spending. You have to know what you're spending on, even just general categories. I'm not saying spend hours, but you have to know what you're spending on and where you can cut if you need to cut. And then, you need to, manage how much you're making and manage how much you're spending, and making sure that they're at least equal. If not, you got a bit of a buffer room. But it's very easy to, go out, spend $100 in a night, super easy. So those things it can't be a priority, I don't think.
Yeah. So usually when you are in India, your parents are spending money on you. And anyone who comes to Australia, especially in India, we don't have the culture of going out and working a part-time job.
Yeah, definitely.
So, we do have, so like now it is a little bit changing because people are working online a lot, but at least the people who were like the Gen Zs, they have a very less culture of, going out and working, especially in India. We don't have the culture of part-time or normal people.
Yeah, definitely.
Guy like me won't go out and work maybe in a restaurant or maybe somewhere else. But here you come, you have to manage your studies, you have to manage your work, you have to manage, other hobbies, like I have one, and you have to manage all of this. So how do you think one should go about managing their time? So honestly, I struggled a lot in the initial 2-3 weeks. Then I started moving on to apps like Notion and, Google Calendar.
Yeah.
But they only help when you're disciplined by yourself.
Yeah.
I used to be on my shifts on time, but my lecture used to miss.
Yeah.
And trust me, this is the problem to every Indian international student. Is their lectures. And because, they can watch the recording later. Oh, I'll watch the recording later.
Yeah.
But they are on time on their shifts because, that's when money is involved. How do you think that there's one critical habit of involving self-discipline? How do you think that student who's an Indian international student who is here, how he can inculcate in that?
Yeah. And I think the way you use the word discipline is actually the answer. because there's one side of it that people are saying I'm not motivated, but motivation is fleeting. Motivation will leave you in days or weeks. It is about discipline, and it comes down to making an actual plan. You have to make a plan with your time, and you have to make a dedication to yourself. You're the one in charge of your time, right? There's nobody that can force you or make you, especially when you're a student in Australia. Yeah, it is about discipline, not motivation. And to be disciplined, you actually have to have a plan that's written out. Like, for example, you have to know your shifts. And I know shifts can change on a week-to-week basis, but you have to know your shifts when you're working, or the periods of time that you're working. You have to know when you're studying, and you'll know your periods of time that you have to be at college or university, and when those times are. And you have to write that down and actually build a plan in whatever form you want, whether it's Excel or some calendar or Google Calendar. You have to write out, or even on a piece of paper. You have to know where your time blocks are being spent. And you have to make a commitment to yourself that I'm going to be disciplined on this, and I'm going to follow this on a week-to-week basis. You'll have plenty of time for free time. Obviously, there's 24 hours up to 24 hours of work. Depends on the university, it's different hours. It can be, as at Melbourne Uni, some of the undergrad courses are 12 hours of contact hours. So, that's quite manageable, and some are a lot more, of course. But you have to know when things are on your time on a weekly basis, because usually things repeat on about a weekly basis. So know your week, know when you have free time, know when you're working, and know when you have to study. And you just have to write it out and make a commitment to yourself that I'm going to these classes. And look, if you have to miss a lecture, for example, set a time on the calendar of when you're going to watch that recording. I think that's one of the practical. Don't just say, I'll watch it later. There's no later. I will watch it at 3 p.m. on Thursday because I've had spare time there. So if you have to skip something or adjust something, that's fine. Things happen. It's about 80% of the time, hit it, get it. 80% of the time, and 20% you'll have to adjust. But know when that adjustment period is. Make sure that you have a schedule even when things have to change.
Yeah. I know I'm asking like a bit basic question here, but the thing is, these are the basic things which we don't know when we come.
100%. And it's different. It's a lifestyle. It's a basic thing maybe for local Australians, but it's not, I don't think, for Indian students coming over when it's a complete lifestyle overhaul. And it's like, I don't know how to manage this. But there's pros and cons to all this, right? It's like your parents aren't paying for things and you have to get a part-time job, but it's like you do have independence and you have control over your life and you have control over your finances, and you can actually grow beautiful independence around that. And so there's always pros and cons to everything in my mind. And so I think another tip to students, I think a lot of these things are actually mindset things. A lot of the problems that I'm helping students with already are mindset things. I can't get a job. I can't find accommodation. I can't find friends. These are some of the big ones. Accommodation is tricky, but the other two are more mindset problems. And how can I actually solve this without just feeling bad for myself? And one of those things is around discipline. I'm in Australia to actually learn and get a good education and maybe PR in the future and these sorts of things realistically. And it's like, how can you be the best version of yourself that you can actually contribute and build? Everyone wants to build an amazing life, right? Nobody would say otherwise. And it's like, work's a part of that. Independence is a beautiful part of that. Independence gives you the opportunity to build the life that you want. That's what independence does. Unfortunately, the other side of independence is you have to work, you have to learn, you have to earn, you have to manage it. These things are just part of that. And so for me, it's actually a beautiful thing to be independent. Yes, there's hard work involved. But I think that's just the other side of the coin. The other thing for your previous question about managing your finances as well, I think setting discipline around that. We're talking about discipline. I think setting discipline around that. One practical little thing that I do actually is I have my bank account with National Australia Bank. That's the bank I use. And then I have 3 other accounts. And automatically, when I used to, have a job, 10 or 20%, depending on how much money I was making and how much money I was spending, but a certain amount, minimum 10%, would automatically, once I get paid, go to a savings account. Automatically. Every week or every month, whenever I got paid. And then I would split up. I'd know the rough math around how much I needed to spend to live, rent, food, groceries, all those sorts of things. And I would put that in a separate living account. And then I'd have one for just kind of whatever else I wanted to spend on. But I would make sure that automatically, no matter what, I was saving at least 10%. And I know a lot of people watching might say, I don't have 10% to save. But if you pay yourself first and save that 10%, somehow you just work it out. You work it out. It just works out and you end up saving. You might have 2 less beers in the week. You know what I mean? It works out. So I think that's another really practical tip in terms of managing your money, is set up some automations in your bank account, which takes 2 minutes, by the way. Super, super easy with these big banks. And make sure you're saving at least a little bit, because that's going to give you a comfort. And you don't want to be financially stressed. You know, you want to be like, all right, cool. At least I've got a few $100s or a few $1,000s after some time in case something goes wrong. So do that. I think that's a really good practical tip.
Yeah. So see, these things especially for the Australians, these things you learn when you are like 15, 16 or 14 maybe. But we learn this when we can. So for us, especially for the Indian parents, they tend to love their children a lot. And by love, they want to give everything to their children. So for me, it was always like, I need 1,000 rupees. So they'd be like, hey, you do 1,000. Until that 1,000 doesn't go away, I won't ask for more money. And that's how it goes for us. There was no concept of saving. I had zero savings when I came here. It was always, if there is something I can always go back home and ask for money. And that's what I learned here, because here it is dollars, and they obviously can't afford. They can afford once or twice, but they can't afford every month spend $600 to $700. So that's absolutely for the generating a kind of discipline here when it comes to making money, because you make money. You make a lot of money when you're on a because the minimum wage is too high here. Trust me, it's really high. Much better than US. I have friends in US. I have friends in Europe. I have friends in UK. They tell me that the amount of money that you're making here and the kind of lifestyle that you can lead in Australia is much better than any kind of other country who international students who attract a lot of international students, because the
interesting. Yeah, definitely. Are you saving yourself? Like, do you have any ways that you're managing your money and your time as well?
So for me, I only work like maybe 18 to 19 hours a week, and I have also survived working only 13 hours a week. So that's how easy it is to survive in Australia.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, if you're disciplined, you can honestly manage your time and manage your money, because that's what I learned in November and maybe September when there was a university break and we got unlimited. So I used to, that's when I got out and started doing some job, and I got hands-on experience, how people work, how the work ethic is. And I did save money during that time.
Cool. Great.
Yeah. And that was like the first time I enjoyed, making money. Like, that's when the money start kicking in. You feel like, I made this money, bro. Like,
definitely. It's a good feeling, isn't it?
It is. So you get to learn about the work ethic. You get to learn about the, how people work, how hardworking people are. So Australians are like one of the most hardworking people that you find here, especially you go around. So one of my best experiences was with Barry. He's where I worked before. He was manager there. And he was like in his 16, he used to work like 16 hours a day.
Wow. There's some people that are crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy hours.
Yeah, that's for the work ethic. That also coming back to the work ethic. People come here and then majority of people, then they find a job in a month or so, but they don't know the work ethic here. They obviously learn the time. Can you tell me a few of the mannerisms and work ethics that people should know before they're coming here? Like, have a kind of mindset that this is what I'm going to, get hit by.
Oh, that's a good question. I think that there is a bit of a slight difference. So just for a bit of context as well, I've managed a team of 150 people in India, and I've managed teams in Australia as well. So I have an understanding, at least through my own personal experience, of different work styles between India and Australia. I think one of the big things is that leads into work ethic is, I think Indian people and maybe employees, and again, this is just personal experience, a little bit more sensitive or emotional. And so what I tend to see in the office is that people are more cared for. And, like, for example, like if you take sick leave, sick leave, for example, here was just kind of considered to be regular leave. Like, people could just take sick leave if they wanted to. Whereas in Australia, for example, it's like, you actually have to be really sick to take sick leave, sort of thing. And so in Australia, there's a bit more just work. Whereas here, I think it's a bit more, and again, this is just from working at one place in India, sort of have a lot of exposure, but a little bit more sort of people first, maybe. I don't know how to perfectly explain it, but then, so I guess the difference, as a result, in Australia, you feel like you just kind of really have to be, working hard a lot of the time, and it's not a lot of time to really switch off. And again, it depends on the industry, it depends on your job, all those sorts of things. But there is quite an intense work culture. You're expected to work hard, even if it's just a part-time job, even if you're just a waiter or a waitress. And I guess another thing on that, everybody is respected in Australia, and people really respect the work of waiters, of cleaners, of these sorts of things. And so, even if you're getting a job at a McDonald's or something like that, it's actually, McDonald's actually, by the way, is a really respected job. If you get a job at McDonald's, the training they put you through is really respected in the industry, and you can get a really good job afterwards. So, I guess understanding that difference in the workplace as well, and working environments between India and Australia. But yeah, everyone expects you to put your best foot forward all the time. And of course, there's a lot of support for you as an individual, and mental health support and all those sorts of things are becoming more prevalent in the Australian workforce over the last 5 to 10 years. But first and foremost, you're expected to work and put your best foot forward and work hard on a day-to-day basis. Not that you're not in India, but I think it's even more of a higher expectation in Australia. That's probably the experience I've felt. And so my recommendation would be to really try, even if it's just a basic job that you feel like, oh, whatever, it's just a part-time job. Try to be the best McDonald's server you can be. Try to be the best waiter you can be. All these sorts of things, they pay dividends in the future. Try to be the best version of yourself, because that's kind of what's expected, but also it's what's rewarded.
Yeah. I heard a very interesting things when I joined here new. So I had the same mentality. Oh God, it's, what job is this? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
That's when one of the Indian guy who was living here from past like 6 to 7 years, he told me that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
So just, no job is, looked down upon here. Every job,
absolutely not.
Everything is, everyone gets to live their own life.
100%.
The goal
I think that is a big difference between the countries, right? Like, I think realistically, if we're being honest, some jobs in India, like cleaners and these sorts of things, that I don't want to use the word look down on, but maybe some people do look down on those workers, Whereas in Australia, it's really not like that. Like nobody looks down on you if you have to get a part-time job anywhere. It's not looked down on or frowned upon at all. It's appreciated. And so it just comes back to your work ethic. People just love, like, for example, if I go to a cafe and there's someone serving me there, and they love what they do and they're enthusiastic about it, and it's like such a pleasure for me to be there, and they'll get a tip and these sorts of things. It's and everybody respects that very highly, very highly.
So, when you come here, that's what I wanted to say to the Indian students. When you come here, just be mentally prepared that you have to do a lot of jobs to finally, get to that mark where you can earn more money and, be financially free, what you say. Because, it does pays here. If you work actually hard.
Yeah, definitely.
One of my friends said, we were sitting after a long week and we were having, he drinks, I don't drink. He was drinking something, drinking, I think, some wine. He said that shit actually works here. If I put it hard.
Yeah, it's true.
Work. If I'm doing something, it will give me results.
Yes,
it
absolutely.
will definitely give me results. There won't be any kind of, because I have experienced some kind of this stuff in India because of the population, because of the competition.
Yeah,
work it a lot, and there will be moments when you won't get the result that you want. But here, if you work hard, you will definitely get the results that you want.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I really like that point. I think that's very true. Another point to add to that is no one cares who you are, who your family is, or who your parents are in Australia. No one cares. Your dad could be the richest guy in Australia and no one cares. But if you work hard and actually produce good work, then you'll get the reward. No one cares about anything else. And that goes to your friend's point and your point. Like, if you actually work hard, you can actually do whatever you want. The population is 1/50th of the size, so you don't have the competition in every industry.
It's more less.
Is it less? Yeah, it's so less. But yeah, so it is. That's 100% true. It's the work you put in is genuinely the output that you get, and I've seen that. I've been a testament to that. I've worked pretty hard, and I ended up getting really good jobs over an 7 to 8 year period, and even the people I've worked with have really excelled. And even before 30, I'm still 29 at the moment, and even people that I've worked for have been 30, 31, still quite young and doing exceptionally well. And that's just because they actually work hard, produce good quality, develop a mind that's a critical thinking mind as well, and not relying on anybody else. I feel like that's maybe another thing I've noticed here is people are a little bit too scared because of the hierarchical structure of India, and in the workplace, the people are kind of scared to do things wrong, which is fair enough. I understand that. But in Australia, challenges and mistakes are welcome, because you're going to learn from those mistakes. There's that culture of, if you make a mistake, it's okay, but let's just keep learning and improving. And yeah, anything you want is achievable by just working hard in Australia. That's true.
You're welcome. If you're trying something, honestly, you're welcomed and you're appreciated for that. Let's see, even if you're trying, even if you're struggling with English, they appreciate it. Okay, just give him your
100%, 100%. And the reason is because you can work with that. If you have a manager and they say you're trying and you're working hard, it doesn't really matter if you're failing initially. If you keep failing over years and years and years, then there's something wrong. But if you're initially failing or can't understand or don't know, they won't care as long as they know you're putting in effort and trying. And that's the critical thing, because that's something you can work with. That effort, it's not found in everybody. If you can show your team and your employees that you're putting in that work, you're putting in that effort and you're trying your best, that's something they can work with, and they'll really appreciate that more than the result.
Yeah, exactly. So I have talked about majority. So far, it is not the specific information which I wanted to give. It's just, how the emotions work, because that's what I wanted to counter here. That's what I wanted to take out on this podcast, because majority there are a lot of information that you can find on Google, how to find a job and how to find a part-time job. But there's very less on the internet about what are the basic mannerisms. Like, even if you're getting ready for a job, for us Indians, it is okay. How do I not sound rude here? Maybe so for us, it is okay to go maybe unshaven and maybe wear dirty shoes in the job, because no one will care, because the other person also coming is because life is too laid back. But here in Australia, you have to be a little bit different there. You have to dress up like, every day you have to dress up in a certain way, because I'm in Philippines. It is different for me. But in other fields, it is kind of, it's kind of a point to how you speak, how you talk, what kind of person you are, and
definitely
what kind of teammate you are. That these are the soft skills that matter more, even overpower your hard skills sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
If you know certain things, if you have certain hard skills, they will definitely get overpowered by if you are, bad at the soft skills.
100%.
Do you want to expand more on how you can develop those specific soft skills which are very niche to Australia and the Australian corporate work culture?
Yeah. And what you just said is 100% true, by the way. And again, the reason why soft skills are so important in Australia is similar to what we were just saying before, is that's something it's hard to teach. The hard skills you can teach, a skill or knowledge, or, you can kind of teach that. The soft skills are a bit harder to teach, but you can practice, of course. That's not like if you're not born with it, then you're a failure. Of course you can practice. I think especially when it comes to going for an interview or trying to, make that first impression and getting a job, for example, definitely dress. The way you dress is very important, and that first impression is critically important. You have to dress in an appropriate way, and by appropriate, I mean know how they dress. The company that you're applying for, know how they dress, and dress a little bit more formal. That's my tip usually, just a little bit more formal. So you're showing you're putting again, it comes to putting your best foot forward. It's kind of the same as that work ethic, right? It's like, I'm putting my best foot forward. Make sure your shoes are clean, make sure your shirt's ironed. That first impression is critical. And then those soft skills, end of the day in Australia, especially, people and the way you communicate with people is everything. Exactly what you said. You cannot have a hard skill or not know how to do something technical. It almost doesn't matter. If you can connect with somebody, let's say in an interview, I guess, but if you can connect with someone in an interview, or even once you start working, and build relationships with people and understand people, I think that's a really critical thing. Understanding people is an important thing, especially once you get into a job. Know who you're working with, know who your peers are, know what's most important to them. If that's their cat, if that's their child, if that's anything. You know what I mean? Like, actually know what's important to them, and that's going to help you build a connection. And then once you have a connection, that's going to be able to build that relationship. And that's what soft skills are about for me, mostly, is people and communication. I think when it comes to an interview, that just comes down to practice. You need to practice before you go into an interview. You can't just, if your English isn't perfect, or you've never sort of practiced on your tonality, or maybe you're not naturally gifted at speaking and communicating, that's all okay. But then you have to practice, right? You have to get a bit better at that. You're going to have much, much more success at getting jobs, keeping jobs, and succeeding at jobs if you improve the way you speak and communicate with people. For me, that's just the number one thing. And that's something I've worked on the last 10 years a lot, put a lot of time and effort into. You just have to practice. And what I mean by practice is call someone, talk to people, have a mock interview, practice changing your tonality up and down, expression, using your hands, do a little bit of YouTubing about the best communicators on the planet and how they communicate and some of their tips. But a lot of it's how your posture, the voice and tonality, and then using your hands and how you're expressing yourself. For me, those are absolutely critical to getting a job, keeping a job, and exceeding at your job.
Yeah, whatever you said is absolutely true. Trust me. Like when I came here, I was like, yeah, that person is. So one of my friend, he got a job. I think he got an internship in some coding company, and he was like, yeah, they're interested in my code, and he was dressed very badly. So in the initial 2 or 3 days, and I had my past. So he got a job very late. He didn't get a job in initial 3 or 4 months. I got a job initially, and I learned all those lessons, all the initial, hitbacks and setbacks that you learn when you come to a different country. But he didn't have those. So I told him, in the first 2 or 3 days, you need to, make friends. He wasn't talking to anyone. He was just going in the office and just sitting aside. He was talking. He wasn't making any conversations. And later, when he started making conversations, and he got promoted now. He got the promotion.
Exactly.
He has to get in the 6 months. He got it done in like the 4 months.
Absolutely.
So
100%.
Yeah, it's just because he's in good relationship with the manager. The job that
absolutely
right now is because I made friends with another guy who recommended me this job. Who gave me a reference, and now I'm doing his job. And now he's
mate. Exactly. Honestly, I probably did better than most of my peers in terms of progression and these sorts of things, just because of how I manage relationships. It's actually the number one most critical thing when it comes to career in Australia, at least specifically. No one cares about much else. Everything else can be kind of taught, and no one cares definitely about who you are or any of those things. No one cares about your connections. It's how you connect with other people. That is if you can work on that before coming to Australia, and then while you're in Australia, obviously I think when you get here and get into the workforce, it's a bit easier to, you're in their environment, so you can really practice it and harness it. But make that a priority for sure. I think for anyone watching, make sure you focus on that. Reach out to people, talk to people. You're going to have so much more success. It's almost a hack, actually. It's almost a hack. Like almost forget about not forget about, but sort of forget about the technical side of your job. Focus on the people side in Australia, and you are going to excel for sure. You still need to deliver on the technical, still deliver good work, but then if you can focus on the people and building relationships and connections, that has been an absolute hack for me. I can't even explain. A complete hack. And people overestimate that and don't think about it. Honestly, they don't really notice it or think about that too much. But you're a perfect example. It's all about the connections you build that lead to that success, career success, social success. Almost all areas of your life rely on how you relate with people, especially in Australia.
Yeah, so I'm here in University of Melbourne because I was with one of the professors from Unimelv, Andrew, and he came to
nice.
me. I got to learn about him, and then I talked to him, and that's when he called me. So I applied to University of Melbourne. He pushed my application, by the way. So that's
great. Wow.
Yeah,
100%. There you go. Like, say, even before the journey even starts, even if you're thinking about going to Australia, perhaps. There's no harm in reaching out to someone, even if you don't have a connection. Reach out to someone, reach out to me or you or someone at a university that you might be interested in. You can always start the process or the conversations early. Like there's no, it's not too early to start at any point. I don't think this people skill, developing it and building your network.
Anyways, I want to move forward. So we have spoken enough about the soft skills and, the side of it. I want to move forward to very interesting topics. So usually, let's say I'm a student sitting in India and I'm going to apply to universities. So how do you want me to categorize what city should I go to and what university should I go to? So let's say I'm going for a course, maybe master's in computer science or that. There are X number of rankings. We can obviously go on the internet, go on the rankings. But what specific do you have to say about the cities? So let's say the Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide. What specifically do you want to say about the cities that if you are this kind of person, you should go to this city? If you are this kind of person, you should definitely go to this city because you know most of it. I haven't also been to most of the Australian cities.
It's I guess first and foremost, I would like to say that you can't really go wrong. They're all pretty similar. It's not like they're so different that if you're this person, you have to go to this city. Of course, there's cultural differences and they are different. But if you want to go to Australia and you just can't decide which city, and so you don't even bother, just pick it. Honestly, just pick a city. If you want to be super comfortable, if you're worried about not being comfortable, pick Melbourne or Sydney. They've got the biggest Indian communities, and maybe that's a starting point for you to gain some comfort, and then you can obviously branch out and meet people from all over the world, which is beautiful. If you hate the fast life, then I would stay away from Melbourne and Sydney, I guess. Depends on the type of Indian person, right? Some people love the chaos and the pace, like I do. That's why I came back, because I just love it. So for me, so then those people, you kind of have to go to Melbourne or Sydney for a bit more of a pace. If you just hate it and you're sick of it and you just want to slow down, then definitely sort of an Adelaide's a great option. Even Brisbane's Brisbane's kind of in between, which is nice, and Perth is a bit slower again. So that's kind of your options. If you love culture, food, multiculturalism, I think Melbourne is the Australian capital for those sorts of things. Absolutely. I mean, it can't be, I don't think there's any city in Australia that really competes with Melbourne when it comes to culture and food and those sorts of things. Also, it has the highest number of Indian people as well, just beats Sydney. And then if you love beaches, surfing, like that kind of the lifestyle, like that dream lifestyle, beach and surfing and those sorts of things, then Sydney's going to be the best place for you. If you love the hot weather, and that's really important, and never being cold, Melbourne can get a bit cold. Like you were just saying, it's been a cold
week. Yeah. The heater is on. I turned off the heater when
Yeah. Like actually cold, by the way. When it gets to winter in Delhi, everyone's like, it's so cold, and it's like 15. I'm like, it's not that cold. That's not that cold. But it can get actually cold in Melbourne and obviously Tasmania. Even Adelaide can get a little cool. So if you just can't stand that, go up north. Brisbane is probably a good option, or Gold Coast a good option. They're pretty nice weather all year round. But then the summers are quite hot and can be stormy as well. That's probably the only things, honestly. Like I said, you can't really go wrong. Any city in Australia is going to have busier areas and less busy areas, have great food and then not so great food, but mostly all the food and culture and those sorts of things are mostly everywhere. But I guess what I've just explained are kind of the key differences between the cities. But like I said, you can't go wrong. There's great education in all the major cities. Yeah. If you have friends and family somewhere and you feel like that would be great for you, then, maybe that's a good place to start. And then, once you finish a degree or something, you can always move around. That's what I see a lot. Actually, people will know a cousin or an auntie or something, and they kind of just go there because they know somebody. So that works. But yeah, I guess they're the main key differences, but generally they're quite similar, and the people are quite similar as well.
Yeah, but the rents are going out of roof for Sydney and even Melbourne. So
that's another one, actually. The rental costs. Yeah, Melbourne and Sydney are Sydney's crazy expensive right now, and Melbourne's expensive too. The other cities are actually are a bit cheaper, so that's another great point to consider.
One of my colleagues is paying like $523 a week.
Yeah, I know.
So that's in the Melbourne CBD. So the Escape Building Student Accommodations is paying $523 a week.
I know, it was crazy. The last couple since COVID, so I was in an apartment in South Yarra, which is in the city suburbs of Melbourne, a beautiful area. It's honestly my favorite part of Melbourne. I absolutely love it. It's right by the Yarra River. It's beautiful. Yeah, very popular area as well. Prime location. During COVID, I picked up a 2-bedroom apartment. And I shared it for $460 a week. And the year after, it went to $520. And then most recent year, before I came to India, it went from $520 to $720.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was insane. It went up like 40%. And I stayed there for a couple of months until I figured out what I was doing. I decided to come to India. Instead of moving suburbs, I decided to come to India. So I left after a couple of months. And yeah, the prices have gone up crazy in the last 2 years. Crazy. But I think that's consistent with India as well. Apparently, now I'm looking for long-term accommodation here. Apparently, the prices in Gurgaon and Delhi and everywhere, I think, are just going through the roof over the last couple of years.
Yeah, you need to specifically know which kind of areas we're looking forward to in India.
Yeah.
There's also, the way there are hacks here to go around how you can find a good accommodation. There are hacks in India too. So
I bet. And then the things that I don't know, but you guys know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm trying to reverse roles.
That's completely okay. That's perfect. Okay, so I think we are moving forward to the last part of the entire podcast.
Yeah.
We don't even know when the 1 hour when our past. So can you focus on I think.
Oh wow, that went quick.
Yeah. I think your internet broke down for some reason. Yeah. All good.
There we go.
Andy, is okay, perfect.
Is
Anyways,
it good?
yeah, now it's perfect. Okay.
Can you hear
So
me? Yeah.
the last part of the entire podcast, I want to dedicate to maybe I want to discuss more about what things that you should not do when you come here. So
Yeah.
big 3 or 4 key takeaways that you want to specifically highlight that these are the things you should definitely not do, because you obviously know what to do, but what not to do.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's a very good one. What not to do in Australia? I think we've already covered it a little bit, but I think overspending. I think if you start overspending, you get in trouble quickly. I think also not taking things for granted. I think Australia is a beautiful country and has a lot of beautiful things to offer. And I think if you, in India, for example, it can be easy depending on, your lifestyle to get very comfortable. I think try to avoid getting really comfortable. Try to stay on edge and hungry, because that's where you're going to reap the absolute benefits of living in Australia. It's an absolutely beautiful place. And so don't get too comfortable. Always look for something better. Keep trying to be the better version of yourself. Keep trying to improve. What else of what not to do? What not to do? I think just try to stay out of trouble as well. Because Australian people can get, especially after a few beers and these sorts of things, can get aggressive. And sometimes violent. Honestly, it's one of the safest countries in the world. But of course, there's always people in every country, in every city that are, that are not great people. And so I think just don't get involved in anything. And actually, that's a tip that I received coming here as well. I think critically important, if you're not from somewhere and you're not familiar with everybody and you don't have your community and your friends around you, do not get involved in anything. Even if there's an argument and you're right and he's wrong or whatever, just move away. Do not get involved in any drama, in any politics. Just don't get involved. I think that's a really critical thing. Yeah, for anybody that's going to a place that they're not originally from. Because if you stay clear out of trouble, then everything else is okay. Everything else you can honestly manage in Australia. But I think that's actually one of the big things, is just stay out of trouble and just avoid conflict. Just walk away.
Yeah. I wanted to add a few things here.
Yeah.
So one of the things okay, so when you move to a new place, just make sure that you have an insect repellent or something of that sort, because
you have insects in your apartment?
Yes, I do. I do. So there are like spiders all over the place outside.
But are they the ones with the long, thin legs? Or the bigger ones?
Notice, but there are spiders. So we have spiders.
Oh, wow. The stereotype is true, huh?
That is true. That is so not Australian thing to notice. You would never notice. You would like, oh, God, fine. But I would notice. Oh.
I had a lizard here the other day, though. A lizard in my room.
That's pretty common in India. I wouldn't notice it. There's a lizard in my room. I wouldn't notice it.
I wouldn't notice a spider.
Exactly. So when two people from a different country meet, then you realize how different, how different the basic things are even in their country.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. It was lovely talking to you, Andy. Honestly, I think it
absolutely likewise.
It was best conversation that I can take out from you. Like the emotional side. There are a lot of heaps of information that is available on the internet, but not specific, the work ethic, how to go, how to press, how to talk. And that's pretty much it for the podcast. If there are anything else that you want to the specific, the entire podcast, I can definitely. The stage is all yours. You can continue. Okay.
Beautiful. No, I think the only thing was just Australia is a beautiful place. Make sure you know the pros and the cons. There's always pros and cons for everything, right? So don't just be fooled by make so much money and all this sort of stuff. It's like know the pros, know the cons, but it is a beautiful place if you make the most of it. And just enjoy the life, work hard, build something beautiful for yourself, and you can really have an amazing life in Australia. It's an amazing place to really set up a great life and a great foundation. So if anybody's curious about studying overseas or studying in Australia, I highly recommend it. But just know what you're going into, and be prepared for all those things that we spoke about.
All good. So I will link all the Instagrams and all the social media links of the Andy in the description section, and it will be flashing on the podcast in the entire podcast. So no worries about it. You can definitely reach out to Andy because he's making like the best good shit content. So
nice.
when you go to his channel. So anyways, thank you so much for watching the video. Cheers.